this episode of the podcast actually created a lot more questions than answers for me.
I know.
But I think that's actually kind of a good thing now that I think about it, because like this will give us the chance to really bring in the book clubby aspect of it into the final episode, where it's like the combined sort of like knowledge of like all the people watching comes together, and hopefully we can navigate through that and kind of find our favorite, sort of explanations for things. Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kaysen.
Spoilers off the table. We finished the game. This is Final Fantasy X, episode 14. We will be doing one more episode next week, which will primarily be us revisiting some scenes. I'm going to take a look through some Ultimania stuff. If you have any questions, particularly if any patrons have questions they'd like us to ask or things they'd like us to discuss, let us know so that we can try and talk about that next week.
Yes.
So next week will be the big wrap-up of everything, but today we finished the game, so we're just going to get through basically the main story stuff today. I think last week I had said we'd talk about maybe some of the side content, but I'm going to save that for next time.
Yeah.
Because I haven't played it yet.
Great.
I've been traveling like crazy, and I'm going to be traveling like crazy for the next few days, so just been really busy with my full-time job. So I'll get to it when I can, but I just can't do it today.
Cool.
Anyway.
Well, I have a few little things to add to sprinkle into the last week's episode before we move on into the journey into the belly of the beast. So I have two things. So one of them was based on a comment. Somebody commented about the lyrics of the Hymn of the Faith how it technically is obscured a little bit as they're singing the song. The way that the words would be written is not the actual technical translation that I was reading last time. The way that they actually sing the hymn, you would have to write it out and then read it vertically, which is how Japanese, would be read easily. Anyways, it only says this if you write out what they're singing and then read it vertically in Japanese. Then it says, for instance, the name Yevon.
Yeah.
It's not actually in the song, the way that I had kind of inferred. So,
gotcha.
There's that part. Then there's two other really, really cool parts. This is sweet, and I can't believe I missed it. I was actually really upset with myself. So, first off, when we leave the arena after killing Lady Yunalesca, the sun is rising again, right?
Yes, right.
Now, we mentioned the sun's rising, but we failed to mention that means that there's hope for a new beginning, right? So the Yunalesca, and I mentioned the 1,000-year, the long night of Yunalesca that she started when this whole thing began, and that her dominance has been the dominance of darkness for 1,000 years. And as soon as we kill her, the sun rises up, and, hope. Even though it feels hopeless, because it's like, that's it. But it's like, no, the hope is there. You can see it. It's like, you can feel it.
New day.
Okay, the last thing, and this is great. This is when this is when Master Mika sends himself. So this is the craziest thing. When we talk to him, when he first shows up, he is standing in front of the symbol of the city of Bavel, which is the wing, the open wings. It's the Yevon symbol without the wings being down, the wings being open and without anyone underneath, right? Well, Maester Micah is standing right in front of them, so it looks like they're his wings, right? And that would signify him being, the representative of the church, and as we mentioned before, that signifies, along with Seymour's staff, something along the lines of the Angel of Death. Well, as soon as we tell him we killed Yunalesca, he freaks out and the camera turns over to the side and it just pivots just a few degrees, but enough to separate the wings from him. Like in that moment, he lost his power. He lost the ability, he lost his wings, he lost the whole symbol of Yevon was disjointed at that point. And he becomes separate from the wings, right? And he's freaking out, he's so mad, and the camera does not show him from the front again with the wings behind him until right as he sends himself. And then, so he takes the wings back just to leave, just to fly away like an angel, right? Anyways, just to disappear into the pleroma. And then and then he's gone. But that symbol there, I can't believe I missed it when I first saw it. I was looking over some stuff yesterday, and I was like, oh my gosh, totally missed that. That's really cool. That's super good art on the part of whoever directs the camera in this game.
Yeah. I know that there was also somebody in the comments who said something about Micah is not sent there because he appears in Final Fantasy X-2
We're not talking about 10-2. I've seen a lot of comments on 10-2, and the problem with sequels, this is the problem with all sequels, almost always forever. They retcon stuff. They have to, in order to justify existing. If the sequel wasn't planned from the beginning, they have to retcon stuff and find a way to fit. They have to force themselves to fit into the world, and it's why I am typically not a fan of sequels if they were not originally part of the plan, of the story.
That being said, I just want to say this too.
I know, people like 10-2. I haven't actually played it, so I don't want to make a judgment on the game.
It's a pretty fun game.
Yeah, I've heard it's fun.
It's my favorite active time battle combat system in the Final Fantasy series. It's got a great ATB system. Its dress spheres, which is basically like class changing. For that game is really fun, and like leveling up the classes and stuff. Like the utility of playing the game is actually really strong, and I actually really struggle to understand why they didn't continue to iterate on 10-2's combat for future Final Fantasy games. Like I really don't get it. Like it seemed like they perfected ATB there, and then that could have carried them into the future. But anyways, it's not like it's a horrible game. I hope
I didn't sound
definitely
like
does what you're saying.
Yeah.
100%.
And you have to, because once you make this shape, once you make the arc, you got to erase it and make a new arc again. And that's just difficult when the arc has already happened, or you just keep arcing up and then up and then up.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into, we had left off right where they're back on the airship and they're about to fight Sin, right? Sin shows up. Yep. So it's like, it's building that giant sphere of water in the sky and the dark kind of gravity energy.
Yeah.
Sin seems to use a lot of gravity magic. It's kind of like one of its primary sort of, which would make sense that it's the ball of water is sort of floating around it, and then it shoots off all those energy balls, and it creates, cuts through land and water.
Yeah, in the coolest way, honestly. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It just, and then everything just sits still for a minute and then
falls back in.
Yeah.
So it's gravity magic that it's using.
It is, but, Sin parts the sea.
Parts the Red Sea.
Parts the seas. Now, that's crazy, because I can't tell when the beam stops. It just shoots holes through the earth, and I can't tell what the effect of that was.
So
it's cool. He does it, but it doesn't do anything to us. We're still there.
It kind of creates a symbol from
space,
right? You see that wide shot.
And you see it. It's 8 lines or something just kind of going out in the midst of basically a hurricane.
Yeah.
It looks really, really cool. I can't quite hit on what the utility of that was or would have been. Well, there in the Calmlands, there was that one canyon where they're this was made by Sin, but it wasn't. It wasn't this big though. It wasn't this looks like just miles and miles and miles.
I mean, these are thousands.
Yeah, we're in outer space and we're
thousands of miles of just a canyon and of fire, and there's 8 of them.
So I would guess the Calmlands was hinting at something like this. But this also could just be saying that Sin changes the face of the land every time you fight Sin.
Yeah.
The whole face of the land changes. Another interesting thing with the hurricane right here is that you got that spiral motif, right? That's basically what a hurricane is. It's the spinning spiral.
That's true.
And it's just destruction that leads out from the spiral. And that's what you got. Also, I just didn't notice until we just watched it here, but Sin's tail is a spiral as well. It's like a drill.
Oh, yeah.
His tail going all the way down.
A lot of spiral motifs going on.
Yes. In fact, I also remember how we were talking about at the very beginning of the game, how when Sin shoots the spawn and kind of nails the earth with these big pillars, and they have 666 written on them?
Yes, right.
That 6 is a spiral.
Oh, yeah, it is.
I don't think it was an accident that it's 666, but also it was probably also intended to be 3 spirals. Like the things are just decorated with spirals that look like 6s.
That's true.
Yeah, spirals are just like everywhere. It's cool.
Okay, so that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
But then, so I was kind of laughing at this.
Yeah.
And now that I think about it, we were just looking at Sin. Let me see this again.
Yeah.
I don't remember if this has been on his body the whole time, but I was laughing. I guess it's not. Is it that?
You mean the
weak spot?
The weakness? Yeah, yeah.
Because Sid shouts out, he's got a weak spot on his arm.
Oh my gosh! All the billions of Crusaders who've died fighting Sin have
no
never
one
noticed.
ever noticed.
There's like a target, a glowing blue target. This reminds me a lot of, well, the boss fight with Ganon in Breath of the Wild. But it's yeah. There's just these these targets, just like right there. Just go hit them, and it's not all that difficult.
This is why I wanted to go back and look at Sin and these cutscenes and things and see
I
if I could see it at all.
I don't think it's there until
so it
they mention
appears
it.
only now.
Yeah. So I did have a thought though for this. I did have a thought of Jecht is making there be weak spots, something like that, that weren't there previously.
Possibly, yeah. It's just
I don't know.
Okay, so I'm looking at, I don't know, just different images of Sin, and I'm not seeing that.
Like on his shoulder,
Oh,
right?
there it is.
Oh,
I
you
do see it right there.
Is it glowy?
It's not glowing, but, I mean, it's definitely there, that little circle. Oh, come on. Let me see it larger.
Just because there's a circle on his body, why would they have...
it's right there.
Why would they have understood that was a weak spot? Yeah. It's like a hinge. It's like a screw. Because once you hit it, his arm falls off, right?
Yeah. Maybe it was there the whole time. I'd have to watch all the freaking cutscenes with Sin in it again, just looking for the spot on its left fin.
I will say that it's entirely possible that he has additional weak spots that he didn't have before, because for sure, Sin is not behaving the way he behaved at Operation Mi'ihen. Sin, I think, could have absolutely destroyed us, and didn't. He didn't do his special blast to kill us, and he didn't use his shield to make himself impenetrable.
Yeah.
And so it's like he's purposely making himself weaker for us, and that could be why that spot all of a sudden is glowing.
Well,
and it's
they
hit
are
here,
also singing the hymn.
So the hymn might weaken him. Oh, you're right. It calms him. You're right. That's where it's going. Yeah.
When was the last time we saw Sin before this?
Dude.
At Xanarkand, right?
When he steps out of the arena, yeah.
I still don't think you see its
No,
left
you just
side.
see him face on, and then he turns and leaves, though. You might see it there. Before that, it might have been Operation Mi'ihen.
Hello, it's right here. Just a little bit further. Oh, nope, you do see it. Okay, so he's turning.
Yeah.
And his left fin should be visible here. It's not long enough to be able to see it. Oh, wait, here we go.
Oh.
I don't see it. I just see that, fur.
Yeah, it's not there.
Okay, anyway. I don't know if anyone knows.
Hey, when you sing the hymn,
the
weak spot shows. And the Crusaders never sang the hymn.
It just seems too silly to me that this would have been there the whole time and nobody noticed. Oh, that might be a weak spot until now.
I do like that when he's calm, that's when it happens. That's when he's
kind
weaker.
of open. I don't know.
Something happens.
Anyway, I think. Don't they try to? No, they don't fire the gun until after the first battle, right?
Yeah. We have to fight him a bit. They shoot the gun.
They shoot the gun.
And then I think it malfunctions.
Yeah, it breaks after that.
Yeah.
They can't use it again. Because I wrote down this dialogue here because it's funny.
Yeah.
No, we're going in. Every blitzer knows when you got the ball, you got to score.
That's when they jump down. They just jump onto Sin's back, basically.
Right. So they had already fought its first phase.
So we fought him. We shot off his arm, and then it's like, what do we do? What do we do now? The gun's not working. Right? Oh no! Yeah, Sin crashes, and Tidus is like, they're like, we got to regroup and make a new plan. But Tidus says, dude.
No,
we got the blitz ball. We're gonna score. And so
right.
he jumps off. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and that's when you jump onto it and you're like on its back and you're fighting kind of near that area with the buildings and stuff from earlier, right?
Yes.
Like the little structures on its back
Yep.
and stuff. Okay.
The ones from when we were there under Lake Macalania.
Yes. That's when it goes crashing down near Bavel. Just right like near the city.
Yeah.
Kind of
yeah.
a cool shot from above. You see it just like crashing down there.
Yeah, that was super cool. It makes Sin look way less like an animal and a lot more like just a rock or like a mechanical thing. Like the way he falls, it's like a spaceship falling or something.
Oh, sure.
But it's just really hard. It's like there's no fleshiness. He's just like a really hard
armor.
thing that's just super
Armor.
sturdy.
The armor
Yeah.
of Sin,
But
right?
but you would think when you see him, there are parts where when he moves it seems softer. But I think he does this thing where he like turns on the armor coating. You see that happen in Operation Mayhem. And it's like all of a sudden what was more of like a skin type texture becomes like a steel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
So they've defeated Sin, but now they have to get you Yevon. And on deck, Tidus and Yuna have a conversation where she starts wondering what the faith meant when it was talking about the fact that, you should call us to help defeat you, Yevon.
Yeah.
And so then she figures from that she needs to summon an Aeon for you, Yevon, to try to join with.
Yeah, so I think
In
the
order
idea
for them
is-
to be able to fight it.
Yeah.
Because it's, anyways, as we see later, like she summons the Aeons and then it like possesses them.
Yeah.
And then they attack it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you wouldn't be able to attack it unless it joined with.
I
an
suppose.
Aeon like
I
that.
suppose so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's just a really powerful summoner. They use all of the Aeons, and this is where the Dark Aeon idea
Yes.
concept comes from.
Right.
When Yevon takes him over, it's like this is the Dark Aeons.
Yeah.
Which apparently you can also get. I did not. Is that like a new game plus thing or
No,
how do you
it's
get Dark
it's
Aeons in this game?
trying to think. No, they appear after a certain part of the story. So like once you advance a certain place in the story, they're just there. But they're way harder than
I
the
know.
final boss.
I've heard.
So you'd have to grind a lot in order to have a chance to fight them. But yeah, there's like a certain point in the story, I can't remember where it is. It's after the first trip through Macalania.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe Bavel, maybe after Bavel. It's like
You can go back.
they appear in certain places.
Interesting.
Or at least, maybe it's actually Xanarkand. Because I know there's one in Xanarkand at some point when you revisit Xanarkand. Anyway, something like that. Anyway, so she figures that she needs to summon Aeons for
Yeah.
you Yevon to try and join with. Then she starts questioning what the purple hooded boy meant by the dream coming to an end.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what those faith on Gagazet are being used for. Like what is being summoned with them. She's thinking about all this. And she starts to kind of put it together because she says, "You won't go away, will you?" I don't know how she starts to figure that out. Like, I don't know how she puts that together with the limited knowledge that she has, but she starts to at least assume that might be what happens. Riku then interrupts over the intercom because Sin is getting back up and it sort of jumps on top of the central tower of Bavel.
Yeah.
And just like is standing there and it's got these like wings that come out. Like these purple, white, clear looking wings.
Like the whole city of Babel is
Yeah.
the wings that come out.
The main gun is still down, so they got to take the airship in and jump.
Yeah. So we jump on his back, and then we fight these spawn like on his back.
Yeah. I wanted to see, because Lulu is featured in a lot of this stuff, being super nice, almost flirty with Tidus, and I was wondering if that's an affinity thing.
Ah.
When he's like, when you have the ball, you gotta score. She's like, "It's never a dull day with you."
Yes.
You know, and then she jumps
Yes.
off.
Yeah.
And then here, she says, "Let's go, just you and me." And he like scratches his head like this, you know, the embarrassed thing. Yeah, it is. Holy crap, it is. Okay, so check this out.
The main gun's busted!
Damn it! All right, back inside. Time for another plan.
No, we're going in.
You got a score, right?
Let's go!
Yeah.
So So this is Yuna.
Star players first.
So that was it. The affection is highest with Yuna.
Nice. That
Which
might have
would
been
make the
mine.
most
That might have
sense.
been
That's
mine.
why it felt so weird to me, because it was
Yeah.
like, why is Lulu saying that? Like, Yuna and Tidus are together at this point.
Yeah, yes, like
And then they should have one more, I think, because that was the part where when you come back here. Yeah, see, this is the one. Let's go, just you and me, she says.
Let's get ready to blitz.
Let's go. Just you and me.
And I was like, huh? What does she mean by that? It's just so weird. I was like, this got to be an affection thing.
yeah.
Let's see what the other
Let's
people
get
say.
ready to blitz. My story must end as well.
Yeah, so both of those
Well,
scenes.
hold on. Is he still scratching his head?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, he scratches his
He
head no
does
matter
it
who.
no matter what. Yeah. Okay.
Let's get ready to blitz.
Don't worry. I'll cover you.
Like that seems way more natural to me than what Lulu said.
Yeah, but the
Anyways.
way she said it, though.
I don't think
pretty
you have to
flirty.
cut any of that now that I think about it. You can just let that play.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, so I figured that these must be affection scenes because, yeah, it seemed a little out of character for Lulu to say some of those things, but it's like that's kind of just the way it's developed based on which character you have
Yeah,
more
that
affinity
makes
with
sense.
or whatever. But that particular line, let's go, just you and me, seemed really weird. Like we just watched the one with Riku, this made way more sense, and
Yeah, yeah.
Arin and some other people. He says, I'm coming for you, Dad, and then they go down, you fight Sin again. This is the one where I think it's facing towards you.
Yeah. And you see its eyes are just like moving.
Yeah, like all over the place, all
That's
crazy.
that's so creepy.
Oh, this was interesting. So after that form, as you're kind of flying into Sin, right, there's just like thousands of fireflies, and they're doing their like, oh,
Yeah.
sort of like ghostly sounds, right? But then you see like an image of Seymour's face. It's like giant.
Yeah, that was
Like,
strange.
comes towards your face.
But yeah, we just kind of absorb into Sin,
Yeah.
I suppose.
And like you're kind of inside now, so you're venturing
Yeah.
in on foot.
And it's crazy. You see a lot of scenes while you're in here. One of them being that dream scene we saw when Tidus was chasing after his dad after Operation Mihen, and then he gets in the water and swims, and then we see that scene of all the people walking around, and then the kid saying, "Go back, you don't belong here," and then we see those trees, right? That's
yep.
like that's inside of Sin.
Yep,
Is
right.
where that was. That's crazy.
Right. So you fight Seymour here. He says, Sin has chosen me. I'll learn to control it from within. I have all the time in the world. Since you were gracious enough to dispose of Unaleska, the only means of destroying Sin is gone forever. Now nothing can stop us. And then Tidus is like, well, we can. He's like, by all means, try. You should thank me. Your death means your father's life. Man.
Yeah.
So your father gets to keep living because you're gonna die. I took a note here on the theme, the musical boss theme here is really good. It's a fun Uematsu boss theme.
Yeah.
He's just going ham on that keyboard in this
Well,
one.
it's one. I swear the Black Mages had a version of it.
Probably do because there's a lot of keyboard.
Yeah, Uematsu. Yeah, he was just rocking out.
It's a lot of keyboard in this one, but it's a good boss theme. Anyways, you kill him, and it's I don't know if you took any notes on his design here, the ominous
I
design.
looked at it. It was cool the way it functions, right?
Yeah, they sort of
They
turn,
rotate, and then they
like,
match
the
up.
colors match up, and
Yeah.
that's like the spell he does, right?
I thought that was cool. Just the idea of 4 circles is interesting. I guess there's a 5th one in the middle that's smaller. I actually looked up Hindu and Buddhist symbols to see if there was anything like that, and I didn't come up with anything. I do know that the general idea of a quatrefoil would be 4 circles, but they tend to be overlapping. These were separate. And so, anyways, I thought it was just a cool mechanic for what they were doing, but it didn't seem like it was necessarily saying anything too big. At least not to me. Maybe somebody else knows what that means.
Yeah. Quote here, but there's no salvation for the damned. Rest in peace and eternal darkness, he says to you. Thought that was pretty sweet.
Eternal
pretty
darkness.
Sweet. Let
Yeah.
the darkness take you. Now, when you finally kill him here, Yuna finally sends him. And
yeah.
I guess this kind of takes me back to what we had talked about, I don't know if it was last time or a couple times ago, about Ginnem's ability to resist
Yes.
Yuna's sending.
Yep.
But it seems like Seymour is not doing that here. And I don't know if that's because he's weakened.
I think we just beat him
fought
too much. Yeah.
And maybe that's the reason. But anyway, I wish there was more of an explanation for why Ginnem could just be like, nope, you can't send me.
Yeah.
But like, Auron doesn't do that. He just, like we said, kind of walks away or tries to create distance between him and her. And Seymour doesn't seem to ever do that. He just gets annoyed that she's trying to send him, right? Anyway, but she finally does it. She finally actually does the sending, and he's gone to the far plane.
Very nice.
It's the end of Seymour. I don't know how you felt about Seymour as a villain, just in general.
In general?
I've seen some sentiments and comments where people don't really like him. It's like after a certain point, he kind of just... I don't know if I can... This isn't my position, so I'm trying to like summarize what I remember people saying, but like I don't want to get it wrong. Anyways, it was something about like after a certain point, probably after the first time you fight him in, which was at Makalania Temple.
Yeah, where we accidentally kill him.
He kind of stops being an interesting villain.
Yes.
And it kind of pivots from him to being more about you, Yevon, and Sin anyways. But
yeah, and then he just kind of gets in the way. He's just weird.
He just kind of shows up every
boss.
once in a while.
Yeah. So, you ever played Paper Mario?
No.
Okay. There's that little kid dinosaur thing that like thinks he's super strong, and he just shows up at random annoying moments just to bug us, and he's like he thinks he's strong enough to beat us each time, and then we beat him every time, and he gets really mad. I feel like there's a character in older RPGs where they would always have this one character that would show up to basically just be a nuisance that wasn't actually relevant to the plot.
That was kind of Gilgamesh in FF5. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And it's just every now and then you have a random battle where it's like, okay, something to do, I guess.
I know there's at least a couple bosses kind of like that in Chrono Trigger where it's like...
Yeah. I feel like Seymour kind of was that, but he seemed like he was going to be a more interesting character. Now, exploring Seymour's story, because he thinks he's the hero of in his own way, and he's going through the battles to try to save the world in his own way. It's interesting if you see it through his perspective, but given, we're seeing it through Tidus' perspective, and Seymour doesn't really do much story-wise, he probably shouldn't really be there. I more or less feel the same. He's just kind of a nuisance. He just shows up, and it doesn't really matter. Unless you lose, then he kills you and it's over. But
I feel like, I don't know, I guess to kind of like go along with that perspective, like maybe the best time to kind of have sent Seymour would have been at Bavel. So you fight him in Makalania, they take his body away, they don't let you send him. But then his role in Yevon and the whole trial and everything like that, and then you fight him at the end of that. That would have been the best time to just like send him, and then he's
that would
gone.
have been better than the whole Gagazet.
Other than he just like, oh, I'm on Mount Gagazet, and I killed all the Euron so off screen.
I know, and then we kill him, but he didn't send him again.
And then he just goes into Sin anyways.
Yeah.
Somehow he just appears in there.
That's the problem. That's what we would say each time we'd fight Seymour.
screen.
It's like, why aren't we sending him now? We know he's dead, so either at Gagazet or at Bavel, why didn't we send him? But we didn't for whatever reason, and now we have to keep fighting him over and over.
I know there are at least a couple of people, and I can't remember what their rationale was. There have been a couple of people were saying that there was a reason why they couldn't send him, and I literally don't know why. Because they were trying to make it out like, like regular fiends, just regular monsters.
You
right?
just kill them.
You just kill them.
But we didn't
You
kill
don't have
Seymour.
to send them, and it was something like that. But, I mean, she literally sends him here, so why couldn't she have done it earlier? I don't know.
It's strange. I'm not a fan of Seymour. I did like him early on, and I do like the general idea of his story, especially what we learn more about his story and his relationship with his mother and his father and all of that backstory. Seymour is an interesting character, but it's just annoying. It's just like he just doesn't have a place in the second half of this game.
It's. I think it's because he does everything off screen. He kills all the Ronzo off screen and just appears to tell you.
And we're
that.
just like, okay.
So we're not seeing what he's doing. He's just telling us what he did. And here
And it's
it's
just
the
about
same
boss
thing.
battle.
It's like, oh, I'm inside of Sin, and I'm going to learn how to control this. Now.
It's like,
How
shut
did
up,
you
go away.
get here?
Yeah.
What happened last time we saw you up to now? It's like he's no
Mm-hmm.
longer on the screen anymore. And I feel like
That's a good
villains
point.
getting appropriate screen time is really necessary.
Oh, yes.
This is why.
But the thing is, once we know he's not the main villain, like, screen time with him isn't useful, isn't conducive.
Well, I think he still could
Right.
have been. He still could have served that role because it's like Sin is and you, Yevon, are technically like the final boss of the game,
Right.
but Sin is Jekt, and Jekt is a hero of the story, not a villain.
Right.
So, and you, Yevon, is like not even human anymore.
Right.
So
So they needed some.
Seymour actually being able, having the potential to actually get inside of Sin and control it himself, would give us a human villain with that kind of power.
Right.
And that would be a really good villain.
You're
But
right, actually. You're right about that.
everything that he does after Bavel is done off screen.
It's all done off screen.
And so it's
So-
just told instead of shown.
He actually reminds me, in The Lord of the Rings, he's more like Saruman, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you have Sauron, but he's like kind of abstract and
Yeah.
not
right.
a physical
He's
person.
not a
and
human being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you got Saruman to kind of be the presence of, the fallen angel, the physical presence of what otherwise should be Sauron, but then it's Saruman, and yeah, he's kind of annoying. He just gets in the way. We kill him, and then we still have to deal with the real problem afterwards.
Yeah.
Actually, we don't kill Sauron.
No.
Saruman.
Yeah, I like Seymour as a villain. In particular, I really like the way he's involved all the way up through Bavel. And like
Yeah,
I'm saying,
yeah.
I'm
I agree.
just repeating myself at this point.
No, I agree with
It's
you.
just the fact that he did not have an on-screen presence in the second half.
Yeah.
That, not even really second half, more like third act.
Yeah.
That made it seem like, he just didn't seem all that menacing anymore, or like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And just there was that lingering question: why is he still here? Why didn't we send him? Why didn't we kill him?
Compare this to the way Xenogears does on-screen presence with villains. It's like all the time.
Oh my gosh, yes,
Like,
all the time.
You get so many scenes with the villains in that
Yes.
game, and you
Yeah,
always know what they're up to, and you
Yeah.
know what they're doing. You're seeing what they're doing.
Yeah, dude. That
It's
game
what makes
is
them so much more
sick.
compelling.
Yeah.
I felt like they needed to do that a bit more with Seymour
Yeah, I think
in this
so.
third act. But so I took a note here to ask you what you make of this next area. It's like really blocky, and there's all these like
yeah,
pillars that kind of come up,
Yeah.
and then like make it sort of maze-like.
Yep.
And then there's
the
almost
tower,
like this
right?
tower of like tubes.
It's a tower
That
going
has-
up. If you look at the top of the tower, it has the spiral. It has like a drill looking
Yeah.
spiral.
And it has like the
Yeah.
green and purple symbols on it going up.
Ooh, the green and purple.
I could not make any sense of
I couldn't make any
whether
sense of the
this
green and
design
purple.
was just, just sort of eerie, or if there was like any meaning in it.
I couldn't, other than the spiral at the top. I thought was interesting that this is like the pillar. This is the pillar of Spira, right? But I actually didn't really make anything of it. That area was very abstract, very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I have to bring up one more thing about Seymour, though.
Okay.
Tidus, this whole story is being told just through his perspective, right?
Yeah.
And so we would have had to have, there had to have been some way for us to gain insight into what Seymour's doing, but it would have broken the idea that it's all being told through Tidus' perspective, that it's his story that he's telling, you know?
Right.
So maybe that's why they didn't show any more of Seymour.
Maybe. I mean, yeah, I was kind of saying this way earlier on the podcast, right? There's like certain changes in characters like Lulu that I would have liked to have seen as scene
Yeah.
to kind of see that transition, be a little more. But,
Yeah.
that you can make that argument. This is from Tidus' perspective.
Yeah.
And it's like, well,
But
the point that I made
For
there
the
was
player, it's still...
there are scenes between characters that Tidus would like he would see or like eavesdrop on.
Oh,
So you
true.
can use his perspective to still get some of those scenes.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have worked for Seymour.
Maybe
right?
not. It would have been just hearsay or something from townspeople talking about
Yeah.
what Seymour did or something.
But I don't know. I guess like the counter to this is like, well, if your POV hurts like the audience's understanding of or
Then
like
you need to do
connection to
something.
what the villain's doing, then
Yeah,
just
yeah.
leave that POV for a second.
I think
know?
that's fine, yeah.
But anyway, let's see here. We return to an area we saw much earlier in the game. It was after the battle with Sin on the Mihen High Road. It seems like a really weird.
It's very strange. The biggest
mini game.
thing is the camera.
It's just slowly rotating around, and these icicles are popping
Yeah.
up, and you're like collecting these crystals that give you items and things.
What I wouldn't like about that, what I don't like about it, is the general idea that what makes it hard is the camera being
Yeah,
not controllable.
right.
If you control the camera, this is just a nothing game. It's too easy. But the camera is, doing this weird spinny move, and so you just kind of have to wait until you can see stuff to do. But
Right.
yeah, that was a very strange area in the game.
What did you make of? I mean, the last time we saw this area,
Yeah, it
was way back after
Yep.
the Mihen battle with Sin.
Where the
And-
Bahamut told us to leave.
Yes. So, depending on who of your two Crusader buddies lived or died, whether it was Luzu or Gata died, you would see their spirit kind of walking into this place.
Yeah. So this is the place of the dead where the people who Sin killed are like absorbed into Sin, basically, in this Firefly kind of thing.
Right, and they're like when we were coming into Sin, like I was saying, there was all these fireflies. It's almost like
Tons, yeah.
Sin itself is like another mini far plane or something.
Sure. Just a collection of tons of Fireflies.
Yevon set this dreams Anarchan out to sea, then called the fireflies to himself to craft the first Sin. So Sin is crafted from fireflies. It's not necessarily a summon. This was the only Sin that never had an Aeon at its core.
So Sin is Fireflies then?
I think all it says is that Yevon called fireflies to himself to craft the first Sin. Okay. So I think it's crafted from fireflies, which is what I think when we went inside of Sin, you saw just millions of
Tons of
fireflies
fireflies,
everywhere.
yeah.
Which, I think that's why. So it's not a summon, it's not an Aeon, it's crafted from fireflies.
Gotcha.
Anyways, the far plane is not inside of Sin,
No,
but it seems like
any collection of Fireflies can become like a window into the far plane or
I
something
don't
like
know
that.
because Luzu or Gata, whatever, was definitely his spirit was going into
Yes,
this
they
area.
made a point to show, and this is inside of Sin. That was my thinking. When Sin kills people, they he absorbs their essence. He brings them into himself,
Yeah. So, what is the name of this area that's inside of Sin? I wish I knew the name.
I don't know
Then I
the
could
name.
look up and we could find out. What
It
the
looks
heck
like
it is.
Makalania Woods.
It does.
Like it looks like
does.
those trees, right?
Right.
But it's I don't know. There's kind of pieces of the world that are inside of Sin. So the Makalania Woods, there's like a piece of that in him. He's got the city on his head, There's
Yeah.
different like the Xanarkand, like the arena and stuff is like inside of him as well.
I can't seem to find information on it, which is interesting.
Hmm.
Maybe there's not.
I would say it's the nucleus because it's where the highest concentration of Fireflies are.
Probably, yes.
And
Which
that's
is
just
why
like
it would
the
resemble
center, right?
the far plane to some degree, but
To
it's
some
also
degree.
kind of Makalania-ish.
Yeah, but it's a nighttime, It's a nighttime version of everything. Everywhere we go inside of Sin is basically
I guess
a night,
what
world
I'm
version.
curious about is why did it show souls in that scene going in and out?
Yeah.
And why does Luzu or Gata, whoever dies, go in there?
So, and I've said this, but I really think this is it. When Sin kills someone, it absorbs their soul. I have a reason for
When
this.
Sin kills it,
When Sin kills someone, he absorbs their essence, right? He takes people in to himself, and I think he makes himself stronger. At least in part, he is something of the Gnostic demiurge in that sense, right? But when we kill him later on and he explodes, you hear screams, thousands of voices shouting out as all the Fireflies kind of like explode outwards. I think those are the souls of all the people that Sin carried inside of him.
but what about all the people who died at Mihen, who Yuna sends?
Well,
Where do they go then?
that's a good question. So,
Are they going to the far plane, or is Sin catching them too?
is she actually sending people? She's just performing a sending over bodies, right? But I guess the fireflies come up.
Well, even
out
back,
of the bodies,
even back
right?
in
Kilika.
Kilika.
Yeah, that's true. Those
All
were
those
just
graves,
bodies.
and
And then
just
as she sends, you see the fireflies ascend from
Yeah.
the bodies, right? I don't know why. So some of the souls would have been absorbed by Sin, and I guess others would have stayed on the beach. But that's a good distinction. That's a good question. I am pretty sure that the souls are stored inside of Sin. As far as sending them with afterwards, I don't know. I don't know what's up with that.
I don't know the answer to this. Somebody come in the comments and explain to me why souls were going in and out of this nucleus area.
Yes.
Why?
Yes, yes.
Why?
And my explanation isn't sufficient because of Yuna sending them on the beach.
People on the beach and in Kilika, I would assume, to the far plane.
Yes.
This is not the far plane, so why were we seeing souls coming in and out? Because then the
maybe
purple-headed boy comes in and is like, oh, go away, you're not supposed to be here.
I don't know, man. Everything we know about the far plane came from Yevon, so it could be a lie when you send things you don't really send them to anywhere. They're still like chilling.
I don't know, man.
They all go to Sin. I don't know the answer to this, but that's
there's
a very good
lot.
question.
There's a lot in this sort of like final area that seems really vague or abstract in such a way that
Yeah.
it's hard for me to really understand how it all works in this world.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, maybe next week when I read some of the Ultimania stuff, some of this will be in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Or it'll come back to me or something, because I do remember reading it, several years ago. But there's just so much detail in the world of Final Fantasy X that it's easy to forget a lot of things. So, anyway, I wish I could grasp more of what this nucleus, it seems important because they
Yes.
showed it earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
This nucleus of Sin, like, there seems to be more to it than I'm able to kind of put together right now. But there you go.
There you go.
You do a mini game in there. That's all it is. As far as the game is concerned,
Yeah.
as far as the gameplay is concerned, you just pick up crystals on the ground and try not to get hit by ice crystals for some reason. But this is where finally you get to Jecht,
Yeah.
who is standing inside of the ruined Blitzball arena in
Yeah.
Zarkand. So
And
you see the
this is
city around.
This is the place where we swim to at the very beginning of the game
Descend down.
when we enter Sin, yeah. And then you see Jecht, it's got the little symbol in the background, and the big symbol in the background. And yeah, it's that exact same place.
Yep.
So this is cool because we show up there. Jecht is there as like a ghostish thing at the very beginning of the game. And then we show up, and Tidus has a line there where he says that all of a sudden he felt alone, like as if any company whatsoever, it didn't matter who it was, anybody being with him would be welcome. He was so alone. He was feeling what his father felt, essentially. And he was seeing the view from his father within Sin. He had kind of like been absorbed into it and then put back out at what's the place? He wakes up in the water.
At Bikanel? Or at,
Not Bikanel.
At
Baj.
Baj, the Baj temple.
Yeah. But it's important to note that this is the same place, and that when we had went there previously, we were in the center of Sin, and we were there with our father. And then we felt his loneliness. And then we got a POV from Sin's point of view, swimming through the water. And then we mentioned we got lightheaded and passed out.
Yes.
But that line about loneliness, that's Jecht right there.
Yeah.
That we were able to kind of feel for him just for a little bit right then.
Right.
It's like super sad. He hadn't talked to anybody in 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about this line came from like way back at the beginning when
Very
he first
beginning,
went
yeah.
down there. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. But this is that same place,
Yeah, so he had been absorbed into Sin there, and then he kind of spit back out in the Spira. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Jecht tells Auron that he's late. Auron says, I know, and then Jecht says to Tidus, hey, it's really awkward, and Tidus just says, hi. They're like, they don't know what to say, right?
They don't. Well, he mentions that Tidus is all skin and bones.
You got
you
tall.
got to work out, man.
You're tall, but you're all bones. You eating right, boy. You've really grown. And Tidus says, yeah, but you're still bigger. He says, well, I am sin, you know. Which
Tidus
was
like, that's not funny.
kind of funny. He says not funny, but I thought it was kind of funny.
I thought it was funny. When you are sin and you can do nothing about your eternal misery, making a joke about it is like
Yeah.
understandable.
Right.
Not for everyone else though. They're all horrified. Like, Don't joke about being sin.
And then he just doesn't know what to say. He's like, well, then, I mean, you know, let's end this.
Yeah. Let's
And this is where Tidus finally gets his chance to say, if you remember really early in the game, they have the one scene where Tidus and his
it's
mother.
a dream. Yeah.
And she's like, you know, you have to, you need to tell him you hate him.
You'll never get to. If
ne-
he's dead,
You'll never get the chance to
You'll
tell
never
him
get the
you hate
chance.
him. So this is where he gets his chance.
yeah, not in the Japanese. It's not though.
Oh, really? Is it
No,
different?
He says something different.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he says dad in English, and he says yeah, and he says I hate you. And he's like, I know. You know what you have to do, right?
Like, let's do this.
And he says yeah.
In Japanese, he says, Dad, you're really stupid. Isn't that great? So, I mean, it's a little different. But then so this is what happened. Okay.
Culturally,
So-
would that almost be the same sentiment? That's such a disrespectful thing to say to your
It is.
elder,
You
right?
do not say that to your father. However, their relationship is such that it wouldn't be that bad, really. In Japanese, it would be way worse to say that to a stranger than to say that to even your own father. But not to say that they say that to their parents. Like
Yeah.
it is not respectful. But this relationship is like almost like buddies, like old friends that hate each other. Whatever. It's not a big deal. And Jack doesn't care. But I immediately went back and found that clip with the mother saying, you'll never get to tell Jack that you hate him. I'm like, it was hate, right? It did say hate. And I watched it, and it is in the Japanese. It says, you'll never get to tell him you hate him. And so I watched this, and I'm like, okay, he didn't tell him that he hates him, but he does after the fight. So after he kills his father, he shouts, I hate you. And that's when he does it. So it's so interesting that they made this change, that they decided to put I hate you here, even though he still says it again later after he kills Sin.
Right.
Or after he fights his father. But like in the Japanese, he just said that he was so stupid. That's what he said. So I don't know. I
kind of like that better.
I almost like it better in the
Yeah.
Japanese if they'd kept it. That way he doesn't say it twice. It's like he really works up the I hate you moment.
It's
and
like
it comes
he wants,
right at the end. You know?
he wants to say it, but like he can't quite, so he goes with like the next
Dad,
thing.
Yeah,
you're
you're
such
an
an
idiot.
idiot or something like that.
You're an idiot.
Such an idiot. Like
I know.
And then he can finally say I hate you after that.
Afterwards, yes. Yeah.
I can't hear the hymn so well anymore, he says. Pretty soon I'm going to be sin completely. I'm glad you're here now. One thing though, when it starts, I won't be myself anymore. I won't be able to hold myself back. I'm sorry. So it's like he's losing his ability to sort of control or hold back sin.
Yeah.
Because I was asking myself, why does he like fight us here? Like, I mean, what he wants us to kill him. He wants it to end.
Yeah. Can we
But
just
I
kill
guess
him? Do
what
we
he's
have to fight him?
saying here is like he's about to lose control. Like I'm not going to be able to hold
I
back.
wonder why.
I don't know why, because they have to have a boss.
Well, yes, that is why. That is why.
But yeah, anyway.
But is it 10 years to the second? And
it's a
just
time
a
of
few
the
seconds
gospel
earlier,
thing.
the time of the gospel. I got you.
It's like wham, like at this point, like
Yes.
you run out of time.
I feel like maybe it's just an instinctual thing. Like he's gonna fight back. He doesn't even want to, but it's just gonna happen.
Yeah. So Tidus says, that's enough. Let's finish this, okay? And he says, you're right. Well, then let's go. And he sort of like falls back and then comes back up as
Tidus kind of tries to like catch him too, but
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
After that boss fight, this is where he rushes and catches him, and he's sort of like.
Oh, I love this too. I love this. This had echoes of when we first met Yuna, and she falls.
Yeah.
And we move to catch her, but Kimari's the one that catches her. You know? And this time, Jack shows up, and he's about to fall, and we move to catch him, and it is us that, we are there. We're able to be there
Right.
for him right then. This was actually a really good scene. I actually really liked
It's really good.
the way that this goes. Yeah, it's very touching.
Because the first thing Jex says is, "You'll cry. You're gonna cry. You always
You
cry.
always
See,
cry."
you're crying."
It's so bad.
Just like, dude, holy fuck. And that's when he says, "I hate you."
Yes, and in the Japanese, he says, "I hate."
And that's a really
this
appropriate
point.
time to do it because
Yes.
he's
Stop
degrading
calling
him
me
as
a
like,
crybaby.
stop it. Like,
Yeah.
why in this moment would you do that? And Jecht tells him after he says, "I hate you, Dad." He says, "Save it for later." And Tidus says, "Right, we've got a job to do, don't we?" And then Jecht says, "Good, that's right. You are my son after all." And then Tidus, this has been happening for a while. Like, he wanted to tell his dad he hates him for a long time, but
Yeah.
we've seen him over the course of the game
Hate
start
him
to
less.
soften towards
Yeah.
him, realize he wasn't who he thought he was, and
Yeah.
be more proud to be his son. And that's where he says here now, "For the first time, I'm glad to have you as my father." So he feels both things at once.
Yeah,
he
yeah.
still has all the pain
Yeah,
from
that
his
doesn't go away.
childhood and
Yeah.
stuff, but he's sort of realized that some of those preconceptions, I don't even call it preconception, he's maybe just misremembering
Yeah.
or misinterpreting like his father's intentions. His father wanted to train him to be a star blitzball player,
Yeah.
which obviously it happened. And he wanted to show him the view from the top, like he was saying. He was just too hard on him, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so he's kind of feeling both things at once, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I liked it.
Then Jecht begins to urge Yuna to call the Aeons, because like Yevon starts floating around.
Yeah, you kind of see
scene.
Yevon as a spirit, like, go out of him, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like in this dark sphere, right? And it sort of like approaches there at the end and sort of teleports them onto this giant sword where the final battle is going to happen.
Yeah, that's sweet.
And it begins so Yuna begins calling her Aeons, and Yevon possesses them, and then you fight against that Aeon, and then the soul leaves
Yeah.
that Aeon, you summon the next one, it possesses it, you fight him. So that's like the first phase of the battle against Yevon, and then in the second phase, it's
A spider. A 10-leg spider.
a spider bug tentacle octopus floating thing. I don't even know what.
Yeah. Something that is neither good nor evil.
I don't know. I guess so. Yeah.
It's
I
just
guess that's
a
good point.
blob. Like
I'm
just
not sure like how to describe what it actually
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
But
Skulltula.
yeah, it kind of does look
It's
like
like a black
Skulltula.
Skulltula.
This is actually in between these fights. This is where Tidus tells everybody that once they beat Yevon, he's going to
Yes.
disappear.
Yep.
And I really liked this scene. I actually really liked the way this was directed, because like he says that, and Yuna had already been questioning that, and they just look at each other for a long time, and
Yeah.
they don't say anything. Nothing needs to be said here, but you're just imagining what Yuna wants to say, but like, what can she say?
I know.
Because she insisted on sacrificing herself the whole time.
Yes.
And he
Yeah.
fought her about that.
Well,
and now
yeah.
he's about to do that. And if she were to try to fight him about it, she would be hypocritical.
To say
right?
that there's another way, which, let's be clear, there might have been another way.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I
But-
doubt it.
Yeah, like she's, I'm sure she wants to be like, no. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that you can't do that. But the whole time she had insisted on doing that
doing it
herself when
herself.
everyone told her not to do it. Like,
And then she
who is
even-
she to now try to say, no, it's wrong for you to do this,
Yeah.
right?
And then she even says so. Well, like when she fights with Yunalesca, it's like, I want to end pain forever.
Yeah.
Right. I want to like do away with this whole thing forever, not just temporarily. So she found a way to do it,
Yeah.
and this is it. You
Yeah.
know, and she can't not do it at this point. So it's the whole thing with Tidus, but also like she can't not go through with it at this point. It's like, oh, I just realized we need you, Yevon, to stay alive, so that he can keep summoning, and that's the whole reason everyone's in this mess.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like,
But that's just fate being cruel. with
in
him.
order to end sin forever, he has to.
He's gotta die.
He has to.
Yeah, you didn't want to die, so now he's gonna die.
So, that reversal of roles, I just felt that
Yeah.
was really well captured in
Oh, I
just
think so.
a glance that lasted a really long time, where she's probably thinking all the, but
And
what
who
can you
knows,
say?
she may have really caught on earlier, but didn't
Yeah.
want to say anything,
Yeah.
And it's all just kind of, right there. Yeah, it's crazy.
He sort of faces up against you, Yevon. I know it's selfish, but this is my story. Once you kill you, Yevon, there,
Yeah.
I love how it shows the villagers in Besaid. And there's the Blitz
Yeah.
players who have identical clapping animations. They're all
I
doing
know.
exactly the
and
same.
then they'll do this. Yeah.
Exactly the same
Oh,
timing.
it's so good. It's so good. I love
all
it. And they're all like grouped together.
Yeah, all the Crusaders, our Crusader buddies are there. So like the Chocobo Knights
Yeah, yeah.
and Luzu or Gata will be there.
Yep.
Even Machen is there watching from Besaid. I'm not
That's
sure how he got there. This is probably something we'll talk about next time. There have been some people mentioning it in the comments regarding.
We did. There was a part where he gives a little more history.
Yes,
At the bottom of Mount
about the
Gagazet.
hymn of the faith.
Yes, he talks
'Cause you-
about where it started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of more lore you get from him because he kind of parks there at Mount Gagazet, and you can go talk to him about a bunch of things.
Yeah.
We'll probably touch on that next time, but at this point he's at Besaid. He just decided to go to Besaid for some reason. I don't know why. Or how he got there so fast. It then shows the faith statues as they start to I didn't really know how to describe this, so I kind
They
of put
just
in
became
quotes
stone?
like stone cold.
Yeah, they
because they already
stonified.
were statues.
Yeah,
but
true.
they just they were colorful and vibrant and definitely had a
Yeah.
life inside of them, and now they just kind of turned to dead stone,
Mm-hmm.
cold, dead stone, right? It shows all of them, all of where we got all the aeons and all the temples and stuff, and then even the ones on the side of Mount Gagazet too. It shows all of them.
Yep.
being
And that stream, that vertical stream
Yes.
of water, kind of falls back down.
and there was some interesting stuff there.
Yeah.
So Yuna's performing Ascending, and all of her aeons are disappearing. Oron, this is where it revealed to everybody else that Oron was on set the whole time.
Yes, yeah.
Because
Yep.
he had told Tidus, and Tidus had already worked that out, but
Yep. Nobody else knew.
nobody else knew. And so she's doing it, and she's, oh crap, I'm sending Oron.
And he's like, keep going.
it's been long enough. This is your world now, right? I liked that line a lot. Got a sword on his shoulder.
Well, he says this is your world now in English. In the Japanese, he uses the word jidai, which means an era or an age,
Oh,
like time.
This is the fourth age.
Because he said, your time, our time down here, your time up there. What is the kid from Sean Astin?
Oh,
In our time down
the
here.
Goonies?
What was it? The Goonies. Yeah.
The Goonies.
Down here, it's our time. It's our time down here.
That's what he's saying. So
Yeah.
anyways, like your time down here, my time's up there. Right?
Yeah. So she continues sending. He disappears. Aeons disappear. Sin disappears.
Yeah.
All the faith on Mount Gagazet turn to that kind of dead stone.
And
The water
then-
pillar
yeah.
dissipates, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
see in the droplets, each individual droplet of
had
water
memories and
had a person's face in
Yeah,
it. And
yeah.
Tidus was among them. So these are all the people of Dreams Anarchy.
dreams Anarchan. Yeah.
So this pillar of water, all the little droplets were like memories. Again, there's something to spheres and water in this world.
Yeah. It being conducive to the energy of the Fireflies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along with them being able to carry memories somehow.
Yeah, somehow.
And so, yeah, that pillar was basically every little tiny droplet in that huge pillar of water was like all the individual people and the memories of Dreams Anarchy, and it kind of just crashes and dissipates, and
Yeah.
the dream comes to an end.
So around this point too, we see that Sin explodes, and I mentioned this earlier, but it's fascinating. As soon as he blows up, you just see this yellow, this light just shoots out horizontally, and it sounds like a scream. It sounds like a million screams. What does Obi-Wan say? A million screams all at once, and then silence, right?
Yeah, right.
And you hear it's just this massive release of energy, just and it sounded to me just like tons of screams. And I would say that those are the souls that were housed
Sin
within
had
Sin. Yeah.
captured. I mean, he's got to be, right? Because you saw them. Anyway.
They're there.
I don't know what's going on.
They're there.
Someone please explain to me what's
Yes,
happening
please,
with
please,
that, with the nucleus and everything. Okay. Now Tidus begins to disappear himself.
Yeah. And they're back on their spaceship. Is that what? Or
They're back on the airship.
The airship. Yeah.
He says, Yuna, I have to go. I'm sorry I couldn't show you Xanarkand. Goodbye.
Yeah.
She runs after him and tries to grab him, but she falls through his body. And this is the big difference between Japanese and English. 'Cause
Yes.
She says,
huge.
She says, I love you in English, and she says, thank you
Thank you.
in
Japanese. And once again, I mention this a lot, but the Japanese version of the game is a lot less romantic. That at many of these big opportunities, like I mentioned earlier, after we leave Operation Mihen, and she says, I'm glad you're with me, in English to Tidus.
Yes.
I'm glad you're with me. In the Japanese, she's saying, I'm glad
All of you.
all of you are with me. And we're all together, all 10 of us or whatever. It's like, okay, not what Tidus wanted to hear. But in the English, they were like, it's more just about the two of them, and then in this one, the Japanese, she just says, thank you. And in English, it says, I love you. And I actually prefer the English translation in a lot of these instances because it helps their connection, Yuna and Tidus.
Yeah.
It kind of helps it along a little bit better than the Japanese does.
Yeah. Is there another context to
So the
saying thank
arigato.
you that where it would be more?
That's possible, but not what she said is the general arigato gozaimasu. Or I don't think she says gozaimasu. I think she just says arigato.
Arigato, just that
arigato.
part.
But it's such a general word that it
Well-
wouldn't have any I love you connotations.
In public,
You say it to
We've talked
everybody.
about Japan being kind of against displays of affection in
Yes.
public, right?
Yes, that is very.
Do people say "I love you" to their loved ones in public?
No, never. There are people.
Because their friends are around
Okay,
them.
I don't want to say never. In public, I would probably say never. In private, almost never. It is entirely possible, I would say even probable, that most of the women in Japan have never heard their husbands say I love you to them ever in their entire life.
Really?
Yeah, that's common. People, it's not a thing you say. You don't tell people that in Japan. I don't know why, and my understanding is that things are slowly changing, and the new generation says "I love you" more.
Yeah.
But it's an awkward thing to say in Japan, and also at least in part, how they say "san," right? Like if a guy and a girl get married and their last name is Ryu, right? Well, it's Ryu-san. The girl is Ryu-san, and the boy is Ryu-san. There is no distinction. They're essentially the same person, right? And when you talk about your family, and when you say "I love you" to your family, you're almost saying "I love you" to yourself, and that's how they view it. That's kind of how the language seems to work in that context and within that culture. And so it is. I probably shouldn't say that it's probable that most women in Japan who are married have never heard their husband say "I love you." I think that, but I could be wrong about that. I will say it is very, very, very common for a woman to go her whole life and never hear "I love you" from her husband, and way more common than in our culture.
Sure.
So it's not something you say in public really ever, and it's something you really don't even say in private. And that's different. The culture is different.
That would explain why she would.
Well, and because we're talking about aisuru, right? So aisuru means I love you. As far as daisuki, which means I like you, that's more common.
Yeah.
You would hear daisuki. It's a softer like skida. You would hear skida if it was in a public. You will hear people say skida. Probably not to their significant others very much, but they will say it about things like you like ice cream. You say ski for you liking a thing, But aisuru, like aishiteru, that's the one. That's the intimate love word, and that's the word that you will not hear very often. So, for instance, when Yuna tells Riku, she says in the English she says thank you, but in the Japanese she says I really like you. She says daisuki desu, daisuki da. That's that can be translated sometimes as I love you. And that would be a more acceptable thing to say. So in the Japanese, they could have had her say daisuki desu, and in which case, or daisuki da, and in which case, it would have made a little bit more sense contextually. But she still says thank you in a very general sense. It's friendship-wise. She says arigato. She doesn't put a gozaimasu or anything formal behind it. But so it's informal way of saying thank you, but still It's just a very general word to use. She could have said daisuki and then they could have easily taken the liberty to turn that to love in English, and it would have been fine. Nobody would have cared. But turning thank you into love that was a bit of a big move. And was there any pushback on that? Have you heard about that? That
I just remember
anyone in
reading
Japan said,
people, these are people in English, kind of debating the reasons for it, but I don't know. I don't really know.
because there were some translations I think that they had to kind of fight for in the English, but I can't remember if that was one of them. And that
maybe.
happens for every game.
Maybe. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember if they had to fight for that one. But it's a good one. It fits. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just thinking about it, the ways that they could have done that differently. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, I like I Love You there much better.
Me too.
He then approaches from behind to kind of like hold her. Of course, he's not like really physical anymore. But,
Yeah.
And then he starts kind of fading away. He walks through her and sort of goes and jumps off the ship
That was a great moment too.
into a
When
sea
he-
of fireflies.
When he like ghostly hugs her from behind.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. This whole scene I think is very good.
Yeah.
It's very good, and they really
The
take their
music's
time.
amazing.
Yeah, the music is phenomenal, and they take their time. They're not in a rush for anything. You know, the camera's really kind of sitting and holding on characters' faces for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's really good. Yeah, he jumps off into just a sea of fireflies that slowly begin to manifest like Jecht.
Well,
and the other
if you
people.
think about it, it's like if fireflies are doing what the Albed say they do, right, where they just take your memories and manifest people,
As projections, yeah.
and he's just falling through a sea of fireflies, like the people he knew would sort
If
or
he's
be-
that-
would
okay,
be
so
popping up as he's passing.
What you're
through,
saying
right?
is that he's thinking about all the people that he
Yeah, it's like
met.
his death, and so he sees his dad
Yeah.
again at the end. It's the last
Yeah.
person he thinks about, and high fives him.
In some way, you could say that his life is flashing before his eyes
Kind
as
of,
it's
yeah.
ending. He's going back through all of his friends and everyone who's died. Yeah, yeah.
Or he's going to
Yeah.
the far plane, which is an interesting thing because it's like he was initially the dream of the faith, not a person like everyone else in the world of Spirit is.
Yeah.
But he was made real as a summon. But like, where did when she sends the summons, right? So she's doing a sending,
I
and
was
the
kinda
aeons
questioning
are
this.
disappearing.
Yeah.
Are the aeons going back into nothingness because there's no
'cause
one
they're
dreaming of
summons.
them? Or is she sending them to the far plane? Because fireflies are coming out of them when they. So this
That's
is
a
where
good- that's a
it
good
starts to
question.
really
That's
bring
a
up
good
a
question.
big question here
Yeah.
about the fate of Tidus' soul. Like,
Yes.
does he go to the far plane because he became a real boy with
Yeah.
the
I'm
Pinocchio?
just thinking about Pinocchio.
the
right now.
Pinocchio comparisons,
Yeah.
right?
It was called Pleasure Island, by the way.
No, the
we couldn't
original-
think of the name.
yeah, Pleasure Island.
Xanarkand was essentially Pleasure Island. Just
Yeah.
The big,
Right. So did he become a real boy and then therefore his soul gets sent to the far plane, or are the fireflies just manifesting people he's thinking about as he's
Yeah.
sort of like fading into nothing because no
Well-
one's dreaming of him anymore?
So a question I have in general is that as the Faith are dreaming up Xanarkand and are thinking of people and places, they're thinking of people and places that were real, that they
Yes.
knew, right?
Right.
Presumably, somebody named Jecht and Tidus lived 1,000 years ago, right?
Yes and no.
Is that not?
Yes and no. I think there is. Well, this is kind of 10-2 stuff, but there was a star blitzball player of the likeness of Tidus in the real Xanarkand.
Okay.
He has a different name, but I feel like it's almost like the Faith used that real person as a template or as like inspiration
To
for
dream
the
up
character
another-
Tidus
Okay.
that we know, because this character appears in Final Fantasy X-2.
Okay.
I'll just call him the evil Tidus.
Dark Tidus.
Dark
That's
Tidus.
great.
Anyway, what was your question?
So
I'm
my question
forgetting.
is, was he a real person back 1,000 years ago?
Oh,
In
right.
which case, this dream where it's like he died, yeah, but he was real, so he can go to
Was
the
there
far
a real Tidus who
That
died
corresponds
in,
to this
in
dream.
Xanarkand 1,000 years ago when,
Yes.
when it was destroyed
and
by
that they're
Pavel?
dreaming, they're keeping him here
Yeah, so it's
But
almost like this
now-
is the dream version of a
of a real person.
Okay, so I don't
Yeah.
think so.
You don't
I
think
don't
so.
think that there
so
was a
he was
real
a created.
Tidus.
He was completely created.
This is like an what do you call it? Like he's similar to the real guy
Yeah.
in appearance and in occupation.
But he's not.
But
Okay.
his personality is not the same. And there are some
That's
people
a big
who,
question for me then.
There's been a couple people who sort of like been skeptical about our theory, or more your theory, on the faith sort of like manipulating some of the Jecht and Tidus in order to become the heroes that would save them from their dream kind of thing. That might be going too far. There's some people saying that. My point is, I feel like the fact that Tidus is not the same as, I think his name is like Shio or something like that.
Shio means salt.
Shuyin.
Oh, Shuyin.
Shuyin
Okay.
is his name. So hold on, let me pull this up.
So here's the thing. If the Faith were not manipulating Tidus and Jecht into having this relationship, but they can create them from scratch, that's basically the same thing. I don't really
I would think so.
care
right?
that one way, whether
Yeah.
it's like, oh, they didn't manipulate them, they just literally created them from nothing, and they aren't even mirrors of people who used to exist. They're completely new creations of artificial people entirely from the imagination of the Faith. That's the same thing in my mind, so I don't mind that.
Machen implies Shuyin's resemblance to Tidus is more than coincidental, but what he means by this is not made explicit. It is possible that the Faith summoning Dream Zanarkand dreamed Tidus in an attempt to recreate what they remembered of Shuyin, as they were charged with remembering and preserving every aspect. So that's more or less what I was saying. But we're going a step beyond that in saying that they purposefully changed the Shuyin character into this character to become the hero of that would save them from their endless dream kind of thing, right? Whether that's true or not, you know.
Well, either way, they dreamt him up. Either way, I mean, so the people. I'm just trying to think about this. So I get it. So all these people were just fake, dreamt up people.
That were probably based on. I mean,
they were based on people who existed, but they're all just.
But you can't remember it
complete
perfectly,
creations from the imagination.
Right? You can't have a perfect.
You can't actually.
Like if I were to try to, if I were turned into a Faith, and my job was to remember. Like all all my friends growing up,
thousands of people you knew. Yeah.
Well, at least
like
at least
your
the
school,
close people or something, right?
Yeah, sure.
Say that.
Yeah.
My job is to remember the kids in my class in freaking like 10th grade.
A bunch of NPCs and then like 3 people.
It would be like,
I know.
I mean, I'd have some details. I'd have some like ideas, but I certainly would not make a perfect recreation of any of those people because I didn't know them. Even the people I know really, really well, that I'm like super close to.
Oh yeah,
I don't see them every day.
You don't know their actual backstory.
Right. I don't know everything that's going on with them. So it's going to be an imperfect recreation. That's more or less what Tidus is to Shuyin.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's almost like what was the public image of Shuyin is probably closer to what Tidus is versus who Shuyin really was.
So what was Bahamut doing there if not shepherding Tidus in a certain direction? That's clearly what Bahamut was doing. Bahamut was influencing Tidus into a specific direction.
Seems that way to me.
Okay, but if I'm open to if that's not the case, but that certainly seemed to be the case.
It's not so much that people are refuting the whole idea as much as saying it might just be like a little bit too far to say.
Am I taking Tidus's agency away in the whole say?
Not so much that as much as like, did the Faith do it completely on purpose? Was it like completely planned out, or was it just kind of like something that happened? Anyway.
Gotcha. That does remind me of another...
We'll probably address it next week when we're going through comments.
Sure. That reminds me of another comment that we did get on this last episode, though, where somebody had mentioned that this whole game is very linear up until the point where Tidus tells his story, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of gives you the idea that there is no freedom. Everything is a set structure. You follow the path, and that's what you do. And everything that happens is just Tidus telling his story. Right, it's just a linear account of what happened. Now, I'm not saying the whole game's completely linear. I'm just saying that that's the narrative. That's what happens here. Once Tidus is done telling his story, and he looks forward to going into Zanarkand, then all of a sudden, like the world starts to open up. The possibilities of the world begin to open up. The game is still pretty linear, but you go through and you kill Lady Yunalesca, and now it's like, now what do we do? And it's fascinating because the way the story is told up until that point where Tidus is retelling the story is like there are no options, right? This is what you do up until this point, at least within the game, right? And then all of a sudden, when Yevon is no longer, like the religion of Yevon is no longer guiding everything, and you can kind of make your own choice at this point. What do we do? Do we actually make sin again using the final Aeon or whatnot? That's the point where Tidus is like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, and nobody knows, and the potential is open. They actually have free will now. They don't have to just do what they're told to do. And then at that point, the possibilities really open up within the game in terms of, well, within the story, in terms of how do we kill sin now? Like we can do anything, and we don't have to do the one thing we were told. So, anyways, that was a fascinating comment because it really does fit in with the game and with like the theme of the game as well. And it's a gameplay way of kind of helping tell the story in a unique way. I thought that was very good.
So, the very end here.
But Tidus becomes a real boy. Pinocchio becomes a real boy because the fairy said,
"Oh yeah,
you did a good job, so now you're a real boy."
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
So, in this game, Tidus becomes a real boy.
Because the Pyre
presumably for the exact same reason. Because if he was not a real person who died 1,000 years ago, like the spirit of a real person, and he was a complete fabrication of the people dreaming, he should not become a real boy ever.
Yeah, right.
And so, unless a divine intervention happened, which seems, I would guess that's what happened here.
It seems like that to me.
Yeah.
Well, particularly the after credits part.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
But anyway, let's talk about that in a second.
Okay.
So we get to a scene where Yuna is whistling the way that Tidus.
She's out on the dock, just whistling
on a pier in Luca, right? Lulu comes and gets her, and they go into the Blitzball Stadium to address a large crowd.
Yep.
She talks about how everybody has lost something precious, and Spira is finally ours again, and Sin is dead for good. We can rebuild. We have a lot of time on our hands. It's not going to be easy, but we have tons of time. And then she says, this is important. The people and the friends that we have lost, or the dreams that have faded, never forget them. So she's obviously talking about the people you've lost and the dreams, the person she lost, the dreams that have faded. Never forget them. And that, again, kind of calls back to me the Al-Bhed theory of what happens in the far plane, right?
Oh, sure.
As long as you remember, as long as you don't forget somebody, they're kind of still there, right? You can still go talk to them in the far plane. Oh, right. We had brought up the far plane earlier, and whether or not Dream's Anakin people should show up there, but his mother did. Tidus' mother showed up when he thought about her in the far plane.
You're right. Yeah. That means she's a real
Unless it's the Al-Bhed theory, where they just the Fireflies just manifest.
But then why does it matter if they're literally dead or not in the actual world? If it's just a projection of you, if you think they're dead, then what's up?
Right. That's the one part of the Al-Bhed theory that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Why can't alive people show up?
Yeah.
When you think of them,
especially if you think they're dead.
There's so much about the game that's ambiguous for this exact purpose.
Which I'm okay with.
So that people will create 15-episode podcasts and talk about it and comment, and then more people will buy Final Fantasy X.
I made a video called Ambiguous Endings on this channel, and I actually referenced Final Fantasy X in particular, and talking about how the ambiguity of the ending is actually part of the story. It's part of the theme, and it's...
Yes.
It draws you in a way that makes things new and that keeps the potential, the possibilities open. And so I don't mind it, but when we're trying to analyze it, it is kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know what's going on there.
Which brings up the final after credits scene.
Yes.
Tidus wakes up in the ocean and he swims to the surface.
No, you missed a part. He's in fetal position.
Oh, that's true.
So he wakes up curled in a ball,
curled up like that.
In fetal position. Remember what I've talked about before. He is being born. This is a birth. When you're in fetal, the word fetal means fetus, right?
Yeah.
Your fetal position in water. This is a birth, right? He's being born into the world, right? Yeah. Then he swims up.
Yes. Yeah. It kind of almost fades to white.
Yep. Which is also a birth thing. It fades to white because you're in a dark place, and then it becomes light when you're born.
So, what is your interpretation of that?
What I wrote, is he a real boy? Did his self-sacrificing, saving his father from the belly of a whale result in him becoming a real boy?
Yeah.
That's what I wrote. Just a question, because I don't really know what this is saying, and I have not played 10-2.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that through the gods that actually do exist, which is why this game isn't completely anti-religion, one of the big themes can't possibly be that, because clearly there is supernatural and like deity type powers within the world, right? But something made what should have been a complete fabrication into a real boy.
Yes.
That's what I take from this, and it's
so your interpretation
the
is
gods
Tidus
smiled upon him.
lives in the end.
I believe.
In Spira.
I believe. Oh well, see that I don't know about that.
Okay.
He's alive somewhere. He is alive somewhere. I took it to mean he's alive in Spira somewhere.
Okay.
I'm not knowing anything about anything. That's what it seemed to be saying to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's so interesting about this to me is they could have so easily just had a scene where she was already standing on a pier in Luca, like looking out.
Just have him be secretly watching her.
They
from
could
the
have
line.
just had a scene where he comes back to life and they're reunited, and you have a happy ending where they're together again.
Were they planning on 10-2?
Why? I don't think so.
You don't?
I don't.
Okay.
But
I mean, it doesn't seem like it. But
what this reminds me of a little bit is like how ambiguous, for instance, the ending of Final Fantasy VII is. It's like, did humanity survive Meteor or not, kind of thing. And it's like 500 years later, you see Nanaki, Red 13, with like his two little cub dudes.
Yeah, up
they
at the
run
mountain.
up and they just see Midgar overgrown, and you hear some children laughing, and it ends, and you don't know if the party survived or if people lived or not, because there's this whole big question throughout the end of that game with Bugenhagen about whether the planet thinks humans are good for it anymore. There's this whole question about that at the end. It's on purpose, like you're supposed to like, it could be that humanity survived because you hear those children laughing. It could be that they're dead. They could have so easily told us that Tidus, that what we're seeing is Tidus coming back to life by just showing him reuniting with Yuna again and having your happy ending. But they purposefully did not show that. Why? What do they want us to debate or to discuss in terms of what this could be interpreted to not, if it's not that? Right?
When we saw the far plane at Makalania, Guadosalam, when we saw the far plane there, it was this waterfalls and water and flowers and this beautiful kind of scene. It's possible he woke up there and he's in the far plane, but that would mean that he was a real boy either way.
Yes.
Because he should just not exist at all if he was merely a dream.
Yeah.
I think. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I seem to view it kind of the same way as you. It feels like a Pinocchio-ish sort of thing, where it's like the Fireflies, because of his sacrifice, they give him, a real body.
Right.
Now you can. But I don't know. I just think it's. I'm not saying anything other than it's just interesting to me that they left that whole thing ambiguous and they did not show the reuniting of Yuna and Tidus.
Are you upset about that?
No, I just
wondering.
think it's interesting. It's
I
an
know, me
interesting
too.
choice,
Me
and
too.
I'm
It's like
curious
the
as
end
to
of,
why they wanted to leave that ambiguous instead of having the big happy ending at the end.
So at the end of the movie Inception, where you don't know if the dreidel
Yes.
fell or not, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah,
It's similar kind of
I
thing.
think it falls because it's definitely toppling.
It seems to be
But
wobbling
the
a little.
purpose of cutting it there is to make you go, wait a minute, and then you go back and revisit it and you try to put together.
And then
if
you
he
do a
is
podcast.
asleep, if he is asleep, then it's because here he didn't get a chance. I know exactly the point.
Yeah.
It's the point where they're recruiting.
In the bathroom where
He's in the bathroom.
he was
spins
and he couldn't do it.
He didn't have a chance to check.
Yeah.
So anyways, this is not a deception.
I know
podcast.
what you're talking about.
My point is, it's almost as if it's being used as a tool to just get people talking about it more
Yeah.
and discussing their theories.
In my
on it.
opinion, that is the correct play that is the correct thing to do with an after credits scene. Right?
Yeah, right.
I'm not a fan of after credits scenes. They either retcon or they do the things that sequels do. It's like your story is a story, tell it here. If you're gonna add something after credits to be like, actually the thing you thought happened didn't happen, just put that in your story. Like don't throw this big question mark. That's what it is. It's a question mark.
Yeah.
So if you think of the whole game as a sentence, then the after credits scene is a question mark, and it's like, well, wait a second.
Yeah,
like, can you
right.
imagine
That
ending a
could
book?
be
Like you finish the book, and at the end of the book is a question mark, and you're like, you just ended the book with a question mark? Like, what did I just read? What is this? What did I just experience? You know?
Yeah.
But one of the things that leads you to question in your mind was any of this real for me? You know, because it's like I was told this story, and then it just got a big question mark put at the end of it. You know, was the story real? What did it mean to me? Is what it meant to me real or not? I don't know. I could see something like that, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan. Although the goodbye between Tidus and Yuna was very good, and if they had a reunification, I don't know
if it would undermine that scene.
I kind of like the ambiguity of Final Fantasy X, really.
Yes.
Despite not knowing what happened with Tidus, he must have been a real boy somehow.
In some sense.
A fairy showed up and...
Yeah, whether this is an afterlife he's waking up in.
Either way.
Or whether this is him coming back to Spirit, being granted the chance to live out the rest of his life in Spirit.
You know, the kid who is Bahamut, he does say something interesting where he talks about when we first learned that we're a dream, we're freaking out, right? And Tidus is like, what's up with this? This is crazy. But Bahamut says something along the lines of, yeah, but things are different for you now. Since you are here in Spira, somehow your situation has changed a little bit. And he hints at something like this. Like you've done things that merit some type of true birth within the world that came out of the dream, you know? But that's just a hint there. So that could be saying something a little deeper.
There's a lot to think about as we go into final episode next week.
Yes, there is.
There's a lot of comments
There's
to
a
read.
lot for everyone watching this to tell us about.
A lot of comments to read, a lot of outside material, Ultimania kind of stuff to look at, and revisiting scenes that we want to revisit and looking at them again now that we know the end kind of a thing, right? So I think this episode of the podcast actually created a lot more questions than answers for me.
I know.
But I think that's actually kind of a good thing now that I think about it, because like this will give us the chance to really bring in the book clubby aspect of it into the final episode, where it's like the combined sort of like knowledge of like all the people watching comes together, and hopefully we can navigate through that and kind of find our favorite, sort of explanations for things, and sort of make sense of the details that maybe aren't like the most important. Like we know the main things, right? It's just like there's certain parts of it that for me, just like I would just like these tied up a little bit so that I can figure it out.
And if they aren't neatly tied up, then so be it. Then that's fine.
It's not the worst.
It is what it is, and I like the art. I think
still one of the best games I've ever played.
They're very good.
It seemed to me, this will just be the last thing we do as we leave off. It seemed to me as we were playing at this time that this is your favorite Final Fantasy game. Would that be correct, or is it still
of the Final Fantasies?
Because it seemed like you really got into this one more than I expected.
A lot. A lot. I absolutely love this game. It definitely made the what did you say, maybe the top 10 list of my favorite games ever.
Oh,
really.
sure.
It's super good. I love it. Final Fantasy 7. Final Fantasy X has an uphill battle against 7 because I played Final Fantasy X when I was 35. How old am I? And I played Final Fantasy 7 when I was 14. So I'm sorry. I don't know. Actually, no, I played 10 a few years back. So maybe when I was like 30. So I have to play 7 again to determine whether or not 10.
That's not happening soon. That's not happening soon.
Darn it.
But it will happen eventually.
At the moment, 10 is packed with things that I didn't know were in any of the Final Fantasy games. And now I'm starting to wonder if they're in all of the Final Fantasy games,
Yeah.
If they're all this well thought out in the art, in the presentation is that
Well,
well thought through.
I
love it though. This game's super good.
Nomura's quote is anything to go by, it seems like his designs in previous games were just meant to look cool.
He did mention that.
So there
yes.
might not be as much meaning
Yeah.
packed into.
But certainly the
designs and
stories
things.
will have the meaning. Whether or not the art actually means anything or not, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we'll see. We will certainly be doing more Final Fantasy games on the podcast.
Yeah.
Not next. Next is going to be Metal Gear Solid.
Yes, Metal Gear Solid won the polls.
Yeah. I mean, I left the poll open, but it's not going to lose. It's so far ahead, it's not going to lose. It's impossible.
Yeah.
The next closest one had less than half as many votes.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And let's see, I think that was Silent Hill 2. But that's a game we'd definitely have to cover at some point.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we got to sign off now.
All right.
Thanks everybody for watching. We're really looking forward to your comments this week because there's a lot of things unclear about. If anyone has any references, send them. So when you type a comment correcting us on something, and you can provide a reference, please do, so that I can click it and read whether it's a wiki article or whether it's
nice.
Ultimania translation or a Dan's Go 08 video that leads to a translation. Just provide as many references as you can because I want to collect them to really put into my notes for this week so that when we talk next time, it's okay, I'm not just going to say what random user whatever theory is what it is.
Yeah.
It's we have some actual something to draw from, right, to validate that perspective. So do that if you can. If not, if you're just going to share, and feel free to just share your theory on something, but if you're going to say no, this is the way it is, this is the canon answer, please provide a reference.
Sources.
Please provide a reference so that I can read it. That's my point, is I want to read reference material this week. This is my job for next week. Okay.
Right.
Goodbye, we're done.